Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 4 of Science 6 with the topic of food chains and food webs. I hope that you are still full of spirit to study for chapter 4. Let's continue. In this lesson, we're going to study about food chains by interpreting the food webs and identify food chains within food webs. Study this lesson, let's start with a question that previously we have learned in stage 4 about predators and prey. So the question is, why is the cheetah chasing the gazelle? So you can see in this picture. Okay, so why is the cheetah chasing the gazelle? Well, the cheetah is chasing the gazelle because it wants to eat the gazelle for food. Definitely. So which do you think is the predator and which is the prey? Well, true, that's true. The predator is the cheetah and the prey is the gazelle. To understand more about this one, let's see the next slide. Well, a quick question before we start with the explanation. How can we group the consumers in food chains? Do you still remember? Yes? Yes, that's good. We know that consumers in food chains can be grouped into three: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Do you still remember what differences do they have between the herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores? Well, the herbivores, what? Yes, good job. It only consumes plants. Meanwhile, the omnivores and carnivores can eat meat. Good job. But the only difference is that omnivores can eat both, not only the meat. Okay, good job for pre-evaluation. Let's continue to the next page. Continue by doing this activity. If you see in this picture, we have the activity of classifying the living things into two groups. The first group is producers and the second group is consumers. Living things that make their own food using energy from the sun is called producers. Meanwhile, consumers are living things that get energy by eating other living things, or we say that they eat meat. Now, let's classify these living things by putting their names into the correct boxes. So, I'm going to give you like 5 seconds, yeah? 5 seconds at least for you to think which animals and then belongs or which living things belong to which box. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's start. Let's start with cheetah. Which one do you think cheetah is? Good job. Consumers. Fox. Which one? Good. Consumers. Next. Gazelle. Gazelle? Which one? Yes, good job. Gazelle is consumers. Yeah, because gazelle eat the grass. The grass is being produced. Okay? And then giraffe? Yes, consumers. Grass. Good job. Grass is the producers that will be eaten by the consumers. Hawk. Which one is hawk? Consumers. Very good. Lion. Consumers. Good. Maize. Producers. Very good. Mouse. Consumers. Yes. Good job. Rabbit. Rabbit consumers because rabbit eat the grass, okay? Or maybe eating the vegetables. Snake. Consumers, very good. And then 3, producers, zebra. Consumers, very good. Now I think you're ready to go to the next slide. Now, main concept, where do you think the plants get their food? Plants make food using sunlight. I believe you have studied this from P1 until 5. So, let's see, consumers get the energy by eating other living things. The producers make their own food using energy from the sun. So, if we see from the following food chain, we can see that the grass, okay, is eaten by the mouse. Okay, the mouse eats the grass, the mouse eaten by the snake, and the snake is eaten by the hawk. Now we can say that the grass is the producer, okay, and then the mouse is the primary consumer, the snake is the secondary consumer, and the hawk is the tertiary consumer. So the primary consumer will eat the producer. Meanwhile, the secondary consumer will eat the primary consumer. Or maybe it can be both. Okay? Hawk will eat the tertiary consumer because hawk can also eat the mouse. So we can say that there are stages. Okay? Stages of the consumer. Let's see the next page. Now let's do the critical thinking. What would happen if there were no herbivores in a food chain? Let's think about it. Definitely the number of herbivores would increase as there would be no more predators to eat the herbivores. The number of producers would decrease and there would be less food for the herbivores eventually. I think this is the same situation as if some of us decided to become the vegetarians. But imagine if everybody becoming vegetarian. Can you think about it? Let's discuss in the class. Now let's wrap up and see the following picture. What is the producer in this food chain? Yes, good job. The grass is the producer. Now, which do you think the primary, the secondary, and tertiary consumers? Which consumers are prey and which consumers are predators? Let's see, the grass is eaten by the grasshopper eaten by the frog, and the frog is eaten by the hawk. So we can say that the grasshopper is the primary consumer and also the prey for the frog, right? And then the frog is the secondary consumer, predator of grasshopper, and also the prey for hawk. Meanwhile, the hawk is the tertiary consumer and also predator. In this example, we do not discuss how hawk can be also eaten by other animals. We are going to study this part only until the tertiary consumer. So, everybody, have you understood for the lesson 1 food chain? I guess so. Okay, that means it's good. Let's continue. In the class, we will play the quiz of Kahoot if you are bringing your mobile phone. So, don't forget, if you have time to check or when you are bringing your mobile phone in some situation, that means we can play the Kahoot quiz 1. And let's continue. Now let's see the homework for activity 4A, page 33 of activity book. Don't forget to complete steps 1 until 3. Now let's continue with lesson 2, food chains from forming a food web. In this lesson 2, we are going to interpret food webs and then identify food chains with food webs. Now let's start the lesson 2 by remembering the lesson 1 from our lesson trigger, where we see the cheetah is chasing the gazelle. Do you still remember that cheetah is the predator and the gazelle is the prey? Now we can say that the cheetah and the gazelle are part of a food chain in their habitat. Now what do you think will happen if there are no gazelles in the habitat? Hmm, let's think about it. Well, if the cheetah have no food to eat, then the cheetah may eat other animals for food, or the cheetah will have less food to eat. Now, can you name two other animals that may become a predator for the gazelle? Can you name it? Yes, a lot, right? There can be tiger, lion, leopard, or other carnivores such as the crocodile and others. So actually, we can say that the animals are consisting or they are parts of a food food web. Okay, now let's check our next slide. Before we continue, let's open page 53 of your student's book. Don't forget to open page 53. And before we continue, let's put on our thinking cap. Let's think about if a living thing can belong to more than one food chain. Can it be happening? Or can a living thing hmm, belong to only one food chain? Well, actually, if we think about it, does the cheetah eat only the gazelle? No, right? So if the cheetah do not only eat gazelle, that means yes, a living thing can belong to more than one food chain. Now, is a producer eaten by only one kind of consumer? Just now we have said that the gazelle can be eaten by more than just cheetah. That means the answer will be no. So does a predator only eat one kind of prey? Again, just now we have concluded that the cheetah can eat more than just one animal. So that means the answer is still no. So a living thing may belong to more than one food chain. And then all of these living things, because they belong to more than just one food chain, so these food chains can be linked together and they form a food web. So we can link these food chains together to form a food web. So in this activity, we can say that we can see many food chains, okay, more than one food chains. To make you understand more, let's see. In this picture, we can see there is grass, rabbit, grasshopper, mouse, frog, snake, and also the hawk. Well, if we put the grass as the beginning, as it is the producer, that means we will put the grass at the front of every food chain, right? Now, before we continue, don't forget to open your 56 of your students book. Okay? Now, after you observe, well, how many do you think the food chains are present in this food web? Let's see. Grass eaten by the rabbit, and then eaten by the hawk. And then grass eaten by the grasshopper, eaten by the frog, eaten by the snake, and then to the hawk. Grasshopper, frog, hawk. Grass, mouse, and then hawk. Grass, mouse, snake, and then hawk. So we can say that there are how many food chains? 5. Good job. Now, what do the arrows in the food web show? The arrows show the flow of energy from one living thing to another. If you still remember our chapter 1, the chapter 1 is talking about how we can obtain energy from the food that we eat. That's why we can say that there's a flow of energy from one living thing to another living thing. That's good. So that's why we can say that how many food chains? 5. So which animals are the prey for the hawk? Okay, let's see the hawk. The hawk, how many arrows go into the hawk? So that means it is eating the rabbit, the frog, the mouse, and also the snake. So, and then which again animals are the predators of the mouse? Which animals is that? Yes, the predators of the mouse is the snake and the hawk because the snake and the hawk eat the mouse. And then which again, let's see, how can we put all the names of the animals or the living things into the food chains? Let's start with the first. That means we have the grass, after that eaten by the grasshopper, after that the frog, and then the hawk. Or also we can use the grass eaten by the mouse. Okay, we are going to find the tertiary. So we are going to find the 3 steps. So grass eaten by the mouse, eaten by the snake, and eaten by the hawk. Now let's see this picture about a plant eaten by the ant and the ant eaten by the spider. How can we draw a food web when we are given a set of food chains? Can you think about it while you open page 56 of your student's book? Now, we start with the producer. The producer is the plant. And then which one is the predator of the plant? Okay, eaten by the ants. So we can say that the plant, after that to the ant, and then spider. Which one is the producer? The plant. So what is the role of the producer? Still remember everyone? Good job. They make their own food using energy from the sun. This provides energy for the other living things in the food chain. So can you give an example of a producer? Yes, good job. We can have the example of the plant, the grass, or tree. So how is energy passed from the producer to consumer in a food chain or food web? So when the consumers feed feed the other living things in a food chain, that means we are saying that the energy is passed on from the producer to consumers. So the energy from the plant is transferred or what is that given or transmitted to the ant, and then the energy of the ant is also transmitted to the spider. When all of these living things are eaten by the other living things. Let's continue. Before we continue, let's think about this carefully before we discuss the next one. How do you think food chains will be affected if the natural habitats of the living things are destroyed? Can you think about it? For example, when the trees in a forest are cut down, herbivores that eat on the trees will have no food to eat and they may die. The predators of these herbivores will also be affected. So, because they will have no longer have food to eat. That means if the herbivores die because they have no food to eat, that means the predators of the herbivores will also have no food to eat and they will die. So imagine how important the trees are because they are the only producers where we, all of us, are dependent on the herbivores, carnivores, or even other living things because we are actually omnivores. Now let's wrap up by asking these questions. Try to answer this question before I give you the answer. Number one, what is a food web made up of? I'll give you the time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, good job. A food web is made up of several food chains linked together. Now let's check the next question. Can the arrows in a food chain or food web turn to point in the other direction? So for example, we are going to turn the arrow's direction. For example, plant not eaten by the ants, but the ants are eaten by the plants. Do you think that is possible? Do you think that's possible? No, no, everyone, remember. Because why? Each arrow in the food chain leads from the living thing that is being eaten to the living thing eating it. So it shows that the flow of energy from one living thing to the next. So it cannot be turned to the other way around. So no, everyone, remember that. To complete lesson 2, don't forget to do your homework worksheet 1. That is food chains forming a food web. Don't forget to check later my next video discussing about our homework worksheet 1. But don't forget to try to do it yourself first. I'm not going to give out the video until I'm sure that you have tried to do the homework worksheet 1 by yourself. Okay, see you at the next slide. Let's see. Now let's study lesson 3, which is the last lesson for this chapter. Lesson 3 is about the flow of energy and toxic substances. In this lesson, we aim to identify the sun as the energy source of a food chain or food web. Describe how energy flows through a food chain or a food web. We have to learn that the toxic substances can move through a food chain or web and harm living things. So let's continue. Let's see this lesson. Start this lesson by looking at the picture on the slide. What can you see from this picture? Yes, true. We are looking at the forest where there is sunlight. We are going to repeat again our lesson from the primary 1 maybe until primary 5. So how is the sun important for plants? Plants use energy from the sun to make food. Okay, so that's why the sun is very important. So what would happen to living things if there was no energy from the sun? What do you think would happen, everyone? Let's think about it for a while. What would happen? Good job. Yeah, the plants or the producers will not be able to make food and they may die. So there will be no food available for other living things. So that is why the sun is very important because they need, or the plants or producers need sunlight in order to do photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the name of the process where the plants are making food. Now, let's continue by opening your book first. Don't forget to open page 58 of your student's book. Now, let's think for a while. I get energy from food. So where does the energy in food come from? So please remember that living things get their energy from the food. So where does the energy in our food come from? Well, the energy in our food comes directly or indirectly from the plants or producers and the animals that we eat. So, where do producers get their energy from? Yes, that's true. The producers get their energy from the sun. Yeah, because just now we looked at the picture of the sun, and the sun is needed, the sunlight is needed by the producers of the plants, that is the plants, to make food. So that's why we get energy from the sun, okay, through the plants. So why are we unable to get energy directly from the sun instead? So we are unable to make food like plants and producers. That's why we are depending on the plants or producers to get the energy. So remember everyone that this sunlight is very important. Let's continue. So our main concept for this lesson 3 is that the sun is the energy source of a food chain or food web, and how energy is transferred along a food chain or the food web. Because why? The producers uses the sun's energy to make food. So let's see these questions. Where do living things in a food chain get their energy from? So true, the living things get their energy from the food. The producers and the plants or the plants uses energy from the sun to make food. The animals get their energy by feeding on plants or other animals. So how do living things get their energy from the sun? The producers get their energy from the sun when they make food. The consumers get their energy from the sun by feeding directly or indirectly on producers. So that's why everyone, this food chain is important to transfer energy from one living thing to the other. So do you think that all the energy obtained from the sun will be transferred from the grass to the mouse? Hmm. So the food chain or the food web, yeah, not all energy is transferred from the living thing to the next. There will be some that is being left out into the waste, which the waste will be absorbed by the ground to be, what is that? Yes, to be used as like fertilizers and everything, which will be again, okay, used by the plants, okay, to make food or to produce fruit. Now, which animal gets the least energy and which animal gets the most energy in the food chain? Well, the hog gets the least energy, while the mouse gets the most energy. Is a longer food chain or a shorter food chain more favorable for all the animals in it? Why do you think that happens? Well, a shorter food chain is more favorable as more energy will be transferred to the last member of the food chain. The next questions, let's think about it. Will more energy be transferred to the hog if it eats the mouse instead of the snake? The answer is Yes, very good. So let's see this example. The sun, okay, eaten by the grass, eaten by the mouse, eaten by the snake, and eaten by the hawk. So we see that the longer it is, that means it will have the least energy because in every transferring of energy, there will be some of the energy that is being left out. Okay, like I've said or explained previously. So remember, the point is not all of the energy is transferred from one living thing to the next. Now let's continue with the next. The toxic substances can also be transferred along a food chain or food web. So how do toxic substances enter a food chain or food web? While toxic substances such as pesticide used in farming and mercury are absorbed by the producers. That's why everyone, we may not eat the food directly that we buy or we found in the wild, okay, or maybe from the supermarket. Why? Because usually this fruit or these vegetables use pesticides when they are being grown in a farm. And also sometimes the mercury, like the fish, when they are eating in the wild or in the water, usually the mercury can be absorbed yeah, accidentally by the fish. So that's why we can say that the bioaccumulation happens because the toxic substances build up in the living things at the end of the food chain or the food web. So, why do toxic substances get transferred along a food chain or food web? So, toxic substances cannot be broken down in the body of living things. So, the toxic substances will remain in the body of living things and get transferred along a food chain or a food web. So everyone, be careful. Yeah, that's why we have to pay attention to whatever that we eat to make sure that there is no bioaccumulation because these toxic substances in our body cannot be broken down. So it is dangerous if we eat too much toxic substances. Okay, let's continue. Let's see this slide and please do this activity. How will toxic substances flow through this food chain? Please match the amount of toxic substances to the living things in this food chain. Let's see. The amount of toxic substances should increase in this order. The plankton eaten by the small fish, right? Eaten by the larger fish. And then the tuna. So the bigger the living things, that means it will absorb more toxic substances. So the plankton will have the least, and then the next one will be the small fish, okay? And then the next one will be the larger fish, and then the tuna. So if I show you using the line, that means this one will be with the plankton. And then this one will be for the small fish. And then this one with the larger fish. And then this one for the tuna. Okay? So everyone, doesn't mean that you may not eat this fish. Actually, fish is very nutritious and it is a very recommendable things or foods for you to eat, but we still have to be careful, right? You have to watch if the sea or the ocean is being what is that has accumulated lots of mercury, what is that, poisoning inside the water. So we have to be more careful of which of the sources of the fish that we eat. let's think about, review again about these toxic substances. Please answer this question. Can toxic substances get into our body? And how? Hmm. I will wait for you to answer first. Can you answer these questions? Yes, good job. Toxic substances can get into our body if we eat food that is contaminated with these substances. So, yes, everyone, toxic substances can get into our body if we eat food that is contaminated with these substances. So, that's why in the previous slide, I have told you, everyone, we have to be careful with the sources where we get the food from. Okay, not only fish, but also other food. Now let's wrap up before we finish this chapter 4. Okay, let's tick the correct box beside each sentence for the sentences that you think true or false. Let's see the first. The energy within a food chain comes from the soil that plants grow in. Do you think that is true? Do you think you agree with that sentence? Yes, good. The answer will be false. Because why? The energy within a food chain comes from the sun. Good job. And then next, a toxic substance decreases in amount as it moves along a food chain. What do you think? Do you think the toxic substance decreases or instead it increases? Still remember just now the example from the fish? Okay, good job. So the answer will be false. Very good. Now let's conduct a Kahoot quiz, remember? So later when we have a special time for us to play the Kahoot, then we are going to play it. But for now, we're going to just wrap up. And don't forget to review again your lesson before you are joining the test, okay? Now don't forget to do our complete homework worksheet 2, the flow of energy and toxic substances. And if you are confused and then you want to review again this lesson, don't forget to, you can always play this video one more time to understand more, and or even you can try to check the following links to understand more about this chapter. It's so nice to be able to study with you and to provide these slides and PowerPoint videos for you. And good luck with your test and see you in the next chapter. Bye bye.